What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Saturdays in the SEC, episode 103. This is going to be our official portal episode tonight. Obviously, don't have any games going on right now. We're in between the conference title games and bowl games starting. We're in that, can't say dead period between games, but things are wide open in the world of college football right now. You got the portal is ablaze. You got National Signing Day coming up next week. We're recording this on Monday night, December 11th. Signing day is next Wednesday, December 20th. So that's coming up really quickly. As I said earlier, the portal opened last Monday when we had our last episode, and a lot of intel coming out right now. Things tend to move pretty quickly in the portal, especially a lot of these top guys are jumping in and usually a lot of times have a place in mind, or if not, have two or three places in mind already kind of narrowed down. So a lot of times these decisions will move fairly quickly, but we're going to get into that tonight since that'll be our main focus. And I'm going to go ahead and pull up the portal rankings just to give us some stuff to go by here. Really, the main guy I wanted to lead off with, I mean, he's number one here in the On3 portal, is Walter Nolan, the number one player from a couple cycles ago. Highly sought after defensive tackle, one of the best in the country, transferring from Texas A&M. Obviously, Oregon has got a visit from him, so Oregon's kind of firmly in the mix right now. You see Tennessee with a crystal ball. He's no shortage of suitors, so I feel like this is one that may take a little bit longer to play out because so many teams are involved in his recruitment here. But I believe Ole Miss is going to get a visit from him as well, which is really huge for Ole Miss, and we're going to get into them here shortly with some thoughts. But you look at Cam Ward, the number one quarterback in the portal right now, is going on a visit to Miami, I believe, starting tomorrow. Kind of the same with Walter Nolan. He's got just a plethora of schools that are vying for him right now. And then we've had a couple big ones from Florida, another team I wanted to have some thoughts on. Big time edge rusher, Princely Emmanuel. I don't know if I pronounced his name correctly, but that guy is one of the best defensive players on Florida's team last year, an area which they struggled in a little bit. And then Trevor Etienne, the star running back for Florida, is in the portal as well. And looks like Georgia may be the front runner currently for his services. So pretty wild right now. We're going to get into a lot more guys, but who are some guys you're kind of looking towards right now and who you're keeping your eye closest on as we, develop here over the next few weeks?
Yeah, obviously Walter Nolan, Antoine Wells, South Carolina's arguably their best weapon is apparently 100% crystal ball to Ole Miss, which I think is awesome for Ole Miss. I mean, they're stacking some talent there where they're going to be able to compete for the championships, SEC, and especially next year with the 12-team playoff and the college football playoffs for sure. But Chase Besantis, dude's got 26 offers out of the portal. He's the number one offensive tackle, leaving Texas A&M, and he's apparently been contacted by 26 other schools, which is not, it's not that crazy understanding how important the offensive tackle position is, and that dude's a beast. And then Landon Humphreys is a wide receiver from Vanderbilt. He's 100% crystal ball to Georgia. And then obviously Cameron Ward, we just spoke about him for a little bit, Washington State, visiting with Miami sometime this week. What my biggest question is, though, on everything, so you see here Dylan Gabriel, NIL value, $1.1 million, going from Oklahoma to Oregon. This will be his third stop in college football. Started at UCF, then went to Oklahoma, now he's at Oregon. And you hear Matt Rule saying a couple weeks ago, he's like, a good quarterback in the portal cost $1 million, $1.5, $2 million. And then you see Mississippi State, that they're not going after some super huge names because they don't really have the deep pockets to compete with everybody else in the NIL value. But then you look back at, I can't remember which player it was that spoke about Texas A&M, and he was saying that's because the media had y'all thinking we were all millionaires and we never saw a dime of that money. So how real is this NIL value for these players, for these quarterbacks? I mean, you got some of the top quarterbacks in these rankings, and number 7 has the highest NIL value, 1.1 million. The other ones are 4.5, 500, 600 here and there. So it's not as big as Matt Rule was saying. And these are the top 5 quarterbacks we're talking about. How big is that gap going to grow, or that number going to grow? And is it real? Like, is this, because there's nobody reporting these things. Like, yes, they're saying it here on On3 that's their NIL value, but is that what they're really getting paid? Is that what they're really asking for? Are teams really coughing up that much money? Because for it to be sustainable, in my opinion, it needs to be reported on. Like, it needs to be open where everybody can see it. Everybody knows what each other's making. Just like, just like the pros. I mean, in the NFL, you can look up every single player that's on a roster, and you can tell what they're making. In the MLB, in the NBA, in soccer, I mean, in everything, you can look up, and it is open territory to what everybody's making, and you can see it in their salary caps to keep the parity intact. And I understand there's a lot less teams in the pros and things like that, but I think it's getting a little out of hand, because if it really is 1.5 million to $2 or $1 to $2 million for a good quarterback, I don't think this model is sustainable for the future, and I think that it's gonna end up creating something of a pro type football, but on a lesser level, because there's going to be 25 to 40 teams that are all in one big power conference, and then everybody else is going to branch off and be, I guess, what you would consider the FCS today is what other teams are going to be, and then the FCS is going to be its own thing as well. I think that's what we're moving to. If this sustains and is able to be sustainable and continues to grow like this, that's going to be what happens in the next 10 years, maybe sooner. But I just don't know the numbers, because, yeah, a quarterback is it's important. But you think back to DJ Uyunglele. He came in for Trevor Lawrence when Trevor Lawrence was hurt, and he played really well. And the next year he signs a Dr. Pepper deal, and he's probably getting paid a decent amount of money. He's on every single Saturday, every game. The Dr. Pepper commercial, DJ Uyunglele is there. And he puts up just a mediocre season. So whatever they were paying him for, they did not get their investment. They did not get their return on investment at all. So I genuinely don't know how long this is going to be sustainable. And a quarterback, yes, is very important. It's the most important position on the field, on the team. But they're not the only ones on the team. In my opinion, you need to start paying these offensive linemen these big bills. And with the way football is going right now, the college game especially, wide receivers are going to need to start being paid big bills, because they're who make the quarterback look good. So I don't know, man. I think that this could, now it's not every locker room's going to be like this, but I think it could create some problems and some feuds in locker rooms. And I just don't think it's good for the whole of college football and the future of college football, if they're not going to put a cap on it or be more transparent with it and things like that. Because like I said with the A&M guy, we're being told they're all making $100,000 or more, and then he's saying, yeah, y'all all think we're getting paid, and we never saw a dime of it. So, I mean, it's kind of confusing. It's exciting, but it's confusing. Yeah. I want to get your opinion on that, on what I just touched on.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think Matt Rule's probably right, to be honest with you. I do think these numbers have gotten pretty high. I do want to talk on the On3 evaluation that they put out, the NIL. I don't think, from reading about it, I don't think that's actually what they're getting. That is just, they have so I'm actually reading here off one of their websites. It is basically, they have a proprietary algorithm that takes into account 3 main categories that are unique to each athlete, which is performance, the type of influence they have, and exposure. So their number one college athlete in their NIL evaluations is Bronny James.
Yeah.
So but they've got him, I think, at 5.3 million, and that might not be what he's actually making. That is just, I think it's just kind of a ranking of showing like, obviously he's got such a big name.
Mm-hmm.
Like Shador Sanders, I think, is number 2 in their ranking. So I don't know exactly how much to take it into account. Like I don't think it's showing exactly what they're making, but I think it's just showing like the potential, like of the influence they have. Obviously somebody who has a bigger time name, like Arch Manning, he's probably one of the highest rated NIL, athletes in the country, even though he's a third string quarterback right now, but he's got the Manning name. So I think they kind of they take several different factors into their evaluation number. I think so. I don't think you can't really like go off of it solely. I think it just shows like a guy like Dylan Gabriel. I think his number is higher than maybe say a Dante Moore, just because of he has such a long track record of really good performance. So a guy like that, he's kind of a proven commodity. You know what you're getting with him. So I think that may be the reason that you see some numbers higher than others. I do think you're right though on this. I mean, it's definitely there isn't much transparency with it because you're most of the public is in the dark on what these numbers are. You hear a few numbers thrown out on guys, but you really don't know for sure. Like that, there's no way of unless you're, really in that inner circle. There's no way of knowing for sure. It's not like pro sports where you know we know the salary of each player and like, okay, this guy's getting this guy's getting this. It's just it's hard to know with this NIL right now. So yeah, I definitely think, as we've been saying before, there definitely needs to be some barriers on this to get it within reason. Obviously, it's not going anywhere. Um,
Do you
but
think
it's
that's able to
definitely.
happen, or do you think the cat's out of the bag and there's no going back? There's no regulating it. It's going to be like this forever.
I think there eventually will be. I just think it's going to be down the line a ways, in my opinion. Like I think it's eventually going to come to kind of a breaking point. I'm not confident that it's going to be anytime soon, to be honest. I think I I don't see anybody stepping in to really do anything until somebody really or a couple parties step in, like, hey, we got to really do something about this. I think this is something that's probably going to go down the road a ways, but I think eventually there will be some barriers to it a little bit, but I'm not confident it's anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's up to the schools uh, and the NIL, you know, boosters and things like that. That it's up to them if, and if a couple of years they're gonna be like, well, we've paid this much money and this is our return that we've gotten, or this is what it's gotten us. Is it really worth all this money? Is it really worth doing this? And they might start, putting some restraints on it themselves and setting well, this is the base pay, and you can get this is what you're going to get to come here and play. And then other than that, if you want to get any more, you have to go out and earn it and sign and go sign autographs or go do what the Heisman contenders were just doing this weekend and going to Canes and serving and wearing a Cane shirt and putting it out on social media promoting Canes. I mean, that's what NIL was intended for. It was intended to go out and speak at a conference or sign autographs or show up at like a I don't know, some fundraiser for some company in your jersey and hang out with the people that are there and things like that, and go into a restaurant like Bo Nix. I believe he was the first one from Auburn to announce he was in IL dealing with Milo's. Things like that is what it was intended for. It wasn't intended for, hey, you want $5,500 to come play for my team? All right, we'll write you that check and then you can come on and play. That's not what it was intended for. Obviously, we knew that's what it was going to turn into when they allowed it to happen, but that wasn't what it was intended for. And I think that it has gotten so crazy in 3 years, 4 years, whatever it's been, that I don't know that they looking at from a wide picture or the broad picture. I don't know that you can even pick a starting point of where to go to try to get a stranglehold on this and try to fix the problem. In my opinion, it is a problem, and it's going to become more of a problem. But I don't know what you would do to fix it, because as much as I hated on the transfer portal when it first started becoming, you know, the modern day college way. You know, you're going to go have a good year and then transfer somewhere else. As much as I hated that at the beginning, I don't think that is as bad for college football as I thought it was going to be as the NIL is. I think NIL is way worse for college football than the transfer portal. And I say that because the transfer portal was doing nothing but creating more parity, which makes everything more fun. You can be out of it one year and then your team can be competing next year. So it makes it more fun, a little more exciting. But the other hand that comes with that is the NIL and the money. And I think that has potential to ruin college football, or maybe not ruin college football, but ruin what it means and what it feels like today. It's going to become more of a pro type feel and not the same feel and drama that comes with it in today and in the last, 20, 30 years.
Yeah, I think too, like with NIL and transfer portal, I feel like they really kind of play hand in hand a little bit too, because I feel like
100%.
the reason there's so many guys in the transfer portal, a lot of it, especially with the top guys, has to do with NIL, looking for other opportunities, not only playing time, but, earning power as well. So I think they kind of, especially for a lot of the upper echelon players of college football, I think it kind of goes hand in hand a little bit too. But I do want to talk about some of these fits potentially with some of these
Yeah.
top guys in the portal right now. What were your thoughts on Dylan Gabriel going to Oregon? I mean, when I first heard that, obviously, he's actually got a connection with Marcus Mariota. They're both from Hawaii. He's actually going to be wearing Marcus's number 8. Um, Obviously, and Oregon's going from a 5th-year quarterback to now a 6th-year quarterback. So that's going to be interesting, keeping the experienced guy there. Personally, I like the fit. I think he's going to be very good up there. But what were your initial takeaways from Gabriel to Oregon?
I didn't think it was crazy because of the guy they got coming next year. Jackson Arnold, I believe, is going to be the starting quarterback next year
Yeah,
for
that's right.
Oklahoma. Highly touted guy. Nothing but good talks around him. That seems like Oklahoma's moving to go and let him lead the team. Dylan Gabriel, he's got his last year. Obviously, can go chase a bag. He made a name for himself. Basically, obviously, he made a name for himself. He's one of the better quarterbacks in college. But his early year and then the Texas game, man, he balled out this year. And now you got Oregon, who doesn't have anybody at quarterback that's a shoe-in to get the job. And it was kind of like an easy transition, I feel like, because he's played a bunch of football. He just saw what they did this year. They were in the Pac-12 championship. They're moving to the Big 12 next year, or excuse me, the Big 10 next year. So they're going to be able to compete at a higher level. They're going to be competing with the bigger names in college football when it comes to the postseason and things like that. So I think it was kind of a no-brainer. I like the decision on his part. I think that Dan Letting made a great decision getting him. But my thing is our schools going to start going away from the high school recruiting with quarterbacks and just hitting the NIL and get the best guy out of the NIL out of the portal every year? Or are they going to still ingrain themselves in the high school recruiting ranks, especially for quarterback? Because that's where it's important. That's where the guys come in and they go somewhere and they develop over a few years, or they might be thrust into the starting job, like a Bo Nix was and things like that. But it seems to me that it's trending to teams are going to start going for the 1 to 2 year deals with these guys instead of, developing time in their quarterbacks out of high school. I could be wrong, but that's just what it seems to me. All the other positions, it's more going to be high school based, but the quarterback position to me, man, it seems like it's going straight portal heavy, and then the high school recruiting's on the back burner.
Yeah, I think it kind of depends on like individual program, like
Yeah.
philosophy as well too, because I think you do see a lot of the same schools that are kind of in on some of these guys.
Mm-hmm.
Oregon, obviously, this is their second transfer quarterback they've gotten in recent years. A school like Ole Miss, I think, what they've done with Jackson Dart, I think they're a school I could, obviously been heavy with transfer quarterbacks recently, and Places like that too are just such an attractive destination for a highly touted quarterback that's got experience somewhere else. I think Auburn's going to end up grabbing one in the portal as well. I think the portal was a big reason that Kyle McCord's not at Ohio State still. I think, like I said last week, I don't have any intel on that, but to me, I can't see the starter at Ohio State leaving unless he didn't obviously didn't think he was going to be the starter next year, or they didn't kind of maybe flush him out and upgrade that position. Because I mean, like I said, you're the start quarterback at Ohio State. It doesn't make any sense to leave. Like there's only one
Right.
explanation in my mind. So because I think they knew they could get an upgrade in the portal, especially with the guys that are on the board right now. So yeah, I think it depends on each program specifically. I think you'll see certain programs that are going to be more portal dependent for quarterbacks than others will be. And then I think you'll see certain schools that, like, just for example, if, just say Jalen Milroe wouldn't have developed the way he did this year. Like, say he would have played most of this season playing like he did at the beginning of the season, then I think you would see Alabama maybe pivot more to go into the portal. Kind
Right.
of like Ohio State, like they didn't, even though Kyle McCord was good, they didn't quite get the production they wanted, or maybe they've been used to getting. So they're looking for an upgrade. So I think it just kind of depends on the situation. And like I said, I think you'll see certain programs be more dependent than others.
That's fair. um, uh, in your opinion, from an unbiased standpoint, who do you think Auburn should go after for the quarterback position? Because, like we talked about last week, it's probably going to happen. Who do you think they should target out of the transfer portal?
Well, I don't know if it'll happen, but I think my first call would be to Cam Ward, honestly, because I mean
100%.
that's not it's not going out on a limb there, considering he's ranked pretty much by everyone as the top quarterback in the portal. But um, I think it makes a lot of sense. I think he would be absolutely dangerous down there. I think he'd be a really good fit for that offense and pretty much anywhere. I think that's why he's got a list of suitors a mile long, because he's extremely talented and can fit just about anywhere. But obviously, I think that's one that makes sense. The other one for me is you've heard a lot about Riley Leonard.
Mm-hmm.
Notre Dame's kind of seemed to have been trending for him ever since he
That's the
jumped
crystal
in the
ball
portal.
right now.
But I think Auburn is in for him as well. I think they're going to make a push in his direction. He is from Fairhope. He's a really talented guy. I think he would be a really nice fit down there too. So I think that would probably be my first two calls if I was Hugh Freeze. And I think there's very likely going to be some other ones to jump in here as well. We're
Mm-hmm.
still pretty early into this. Some reports of like, hey, don't be surprised if some big names don't jump in a little bit later. Because when you're a big name, when you're one of the top players in the sport or at your position, things like that, you're going to find a landing spot pretty easily. Like you don't have to really jump in here like maybe some of these other guys have to. So I think there's still some big names that maybe haven't entered quite yet either. I think we still have a long way to go on this. So I think there may be some other options for them as well, but that would probably be the first two I was looking at if I'm all.
I agree with you. I've heard the Riley Leonard. Also heard that he's probably more than likely going to end up at Notre Dame. The homecoming is probably not going to be likely to happen. I've thought, obviously, Cam Ward, which I talked about Cam Ward last year when he entered the transfer portal, potentially coming to Auburn. So, run it back, let it happen again. Both quarterbacks for Oregon State are leaving. They're going to the Mountain West, I believe. So I can't blame them for jumping out of there. Uwe Ungalale is in the transfer portal again, and Aiden Childs, he's following his coach to Michigan State, probably going to be presumed the number one guy there at the quarterback spot.
Yeah, they're
So
really high on him too. I
yeah,
think he's going.
young
Sounds like
guy,
he's
yeah,
gonna be a really good player for them.
and playing behind Uwe Ungalale, who's had a lot of snaps in college football. I mean, you can only guess how well he grew as a player, just being under him and learning from him, being mentored by him. But yeah, following his coach, keeping the system, keeping the same, familiar system, that's going to benefit him big time. I believe we touched on Vandergrift last weekend or last week going to Kentucky, or we talked about he's probably going to go to Kentucky. I believe he made it committed the day after we recorded. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's a huge pickup. I think that's a better pickup than what they had last year, coming from NC State. And I've seen all the reports in the media on Brock Vandagriff when he was coming into Georgia, a 5-star recruit. Competed for the starting quarterback job, just couldn't quite edge it out. And I think that is a huge, huge pickup for Stoops and gang down there in Lexington. And I'm excited to see what he's going to be able to do. And then Uiagalelei potentially coming back to the ACC, going to play his former team, hopefully, depending on which school he decides to go to. But I think that wherever he ends up, they're getting a great quarterback and they're getting a great talent. And I don't think he was utilized in the best way possible at Clemson or while he was at Clemson. I could be wrong there, but from what we saw at Clemson to what we saw this year, he looked like a completely different quarterback. Now, he was not an all-world, showstopper this year, but he was a much, much better quarterback than he was at Clemson when he had the full range of the offense there.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of buzz, obviously, of him coming back to the ACC. Louisville just added a quarterback commit from Texas Tech. So I think that's probably less likely at this point for him now. You see Florida State on the board. I think that's a possibility. That would be something. Him coming back to the ACC and going to Florida State, that would be pretty wild.
Yeah.
And then there's actually some buzz. I was listening to Matt Zenitz, who is with On3 covering this transfer portal stuff, and he actually threw out Mississippi State as a possibility for DJ. So that would be something. I don't know if they're like the front runner necessarily, but he threw that as a team to watch for him potentially with Jeff Lebby there. I did want to talk about too, Will Rogers, since we're on Mississippi State. A lot of buzz. It seems like he's very likely to end up at Washington. What do you think about that fit? Because I mean, it makes perfect sense. I mean, this is an air raid guy, leading passer in SEC history. I think going from Michael Penix, obviously they've been an air raid offense the last few years. I think that would be a nice fit for him.
Yeah, 100%. I saw that on Twitter earlier today. I didn't know how much weight it held, but I think that is a great fit for him, especially seeing what Penix did this year. We know what Will Rogers can do. He can spin it. He like you said, the all-time leading passer in SEC history. I mean, I think it only bodes well for him to go somewhere that they're going to throw the ball 30 to 40 times a game. Those West Coast offenses, that's what they're built on. They're built on the strength of the quarterback and letting it rip. And I would have all the confidence in the world with him in the backfield, letting him throw it 30, 40 times a game without a doubt. I do want to talk about Arkansas picking up a quarterback commit from Taylor Green. Pretty much you're taking out KJ Jefferson because he hit the portal, and you're putting him in with a KJ Jefferson 2.0. He's a little bit skinnier than KJ Jefferson, but he's about the same size. I believe he's there he is right there. He's 6'5", 215, so a little bit skinnier than KJ Jefferson, but the dude's a really good football player. Committed to Arkansas yesterday. I believe it was yesterday. Could have been today, one of the two. I just know I saw it on Twitter earlier, a graphic of him with his family in the Arkansas uniform saying he was committed. Another name that it really shocked me when I saw that hit the portal is Rocket Sanders, man. KJ hit the portal. You can understand that he's going on his last year, his final year of eligibility. But then you got Rocket Sanders, who led the SEC in rushing 2 years ago, had a banged up knee this year, so was held out of about 5 or 6 games. So obviously the numbers were not the same, but when he did play, he was effective, and that really, obviously Etienne, I'd heard some rumors that he might be hitting the portal just because of what Florida's been, but man, with Rocket Sanders hitting the portal, that is insane. I did not see the 100% crystal ball to South Carolina. Huge pickup for South Carolina if that does happen, because I believe South Carolina had a running back transfer out of there earlier this week as well. So I
Yes,
think
Mario
wherever
and
Rocket Sanders ends up, he's going to play. He's going to get a lot of touches. But that really shocked me because he was Arkansas's offense, and now he's hitting the portal and finding a new home, which I think it's crazy. Number one, because like I just said, he was their offense. But that name, there's going to be a few names that shock you in the portal, but that was the biggest one. When I saw that, I couldn't believe it. Honestly, I thought it was a troll at first.
yeah, the big thing I've been hearing with Arkansas, or I mean with South Carolina with Rocket Sanders is before last season they hired Dow Loggins, the offense coordinator there at South Carolina. Now he was with Rocket Sanders out of Arkansas, so they kind of have that connection. I think that's for, from what it seems, that's a big reason why. Because as you mentioned too, Rocket Sanders had a huge 2022 season for
Yeah.
Arkansas, well over 1,000 yards, double-digit touchdowns, and then this year banged up, just wasn't really ever able to be the same this year for Arkansas. Wasn't able to stay healthy, and even when he was out there, just wasn't as effective as what you've seen him be in the past, and
Right.
especially in 2022. So yeah, I'm with you. That was definitely a surprise, but it seems like that relationship with Dow Loggins and him being there at South Carolina now, and that also being an area, a big area of need for South Carolina. Obviously, we know how pass first they've been the last several years with Shane Beamer and Spencer Rattler. So that seems to be a big connection there. With Rocket Sanders linked to South Carolina.
I got a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Ja'Cory Brooks has entered the portal. One of the biggest names, in Alabama recruiting a couple of years ago. Played a decent amount. I believe it was 2 years ago. And then
Yes,
just
they
didn't
did.
see much time this year. I don't know if he got injured or whatever it was. I believe he did get injured this year. I could be wrong. Had a
He
big
was
block
banged up
punt.
some. Yeah.
He had a block punt against Ole Miss. Really, that was pretty much his story this year. He had a block punt against Ole Miss. Other than that, didn't play a whole lot. What are your thoughts there? And from what you've read or maybe have heard or seen, on tape, what are your thoughts on why he's entering the portal and not staying at Alabama?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I wasn't surprised just on based on the way this year played out and him kind of getting passed on the depth chart. It really started pretty early on too, because even when he was healthy earlier in the season, he just wasn't getting playing time over guys, like Isaiah Bond, who's really stepped up. Kendrick Law, even guys like Kobe Prentice. Obviously, Jermaine Burton was back this year as well, so he just which was a huge surprise to me. I was really expecting him to have a big year this year.
Yeah.
Um, if you would have told me, um, if you would have told me he would only have 3 catches this year, I would have said, well, I guess he tore his ACL in the first game this year.
Yeah, I
I
mean, we
mean,
talked
because
about him in the preview.
yeah, I mean, it was definitely a surprise. I mean, definitely a big surprise. Like if you would have, like I said, if you'd have told me in August he would only have 3 catches this year, I was like, there's no way. Like Robbie Utes had more catches than Ja'Cory Brooks this year. I
Yeah.
mean, that's insanity. So, um, yeah, definitely a big surprise. But I mean, obviously, after seeing the way the year played out, I'm not surprised at this point that he is transferring just based on the way he's been on the depth chart. And he was hurt um, towards the end of the year, and he was out the last several games. So, like I said, not really a surprise from that standpoint, the way it played out. But yeah, if you would have told me going into this year, I was expecting a big year from him the way he finished 2022. Obviously, he had the big Iron Bowl catch in 2021, and I'm like, man, this guy's really he's going to be something for us, and it
Yeah.
just never really panned out to his full potential. I am curious to see though what he does with a change of scenery. I still believe in his talent. I think I still think he can be a really good player, but
Yeah, bring him
just
on down to the plains. We got plenty of room. We'll make
yeah, I
room.
mean he really is a really good talent. So I do think I think he can go somewhere else and be really successful. But it's kind of something too when you're at one of these top schools that are just loaded at pretty much every position. It's like when you fall behind a little bit, it's hard to get it back
Yeah.
because you just got so many guys right there that are just pretty much equally as talented as you are, and it's like when you miss a little bit of time or you just lose a step a little bit, it's hard to get that back. I feel like for a lot of guys, and because there's so many good options at places like Alabama and Georgia and Ohio State and your top 10 or 15 schools. There's just so much talent there, and I'm wishing him the best. Though I hope he is really successful because I do believe in his talent. Think he can be a really good player. I do want to talk. I do kind of want to talk about some receivers a little bit. I've been wanting to talk about this all day. You mentioned it earlier with Juice Wells, crystal ball to Ole Miss. I'm telling y'all right now, man, this Ole Miss offense is going to be special next year. Jackson Dart's back. We know Quinshon Judkins is back. Trey Harris announced today he's back next year. I
Oh,
believe it was yesterday or today. Caden Prescorn, the tight end, said he's coming back. If you could add Juice Wells to that mix and who knows, maybe a couple other pieces before it's all said and done, this is by far going to be one of the best offenses in the country next year. I mean, we already know they're a really great offense, so we come to expect that under Lane Kiffin. But I'm telling you, it's going to be scary hours next year for that Ole Miss offense. That's going to be a man. That's going to be fun to watch. So I'm really excited to see if they're able to add him, maybe what other pieces they're able to bring in. But Ole Miss's squad for 2024 is looking pretty nice.
yeah, and staying on the wide receiver train, Auburn went and got Robert Lewis from Georgia State. He's a redshirt senior. This past year, he had caught 70 passes for 877 yards and 7 touchdowns. Had 6 touchdowns last year on 22 catches. So the dude is he's elite. He's got elite speed. But I mean, catching 70 passes, that's a damn good year. So it definitely helps strengthen the wide receiver room, which has been down the last few years for Auburn. Auburn's doing whatever they can to build it. They're doing a fantastic job through the high school recruiting ranks, getting a bunch of big time name guys. Just flipped Cam Coleman a few weeks ago. Got Perry Thompson looking to flip Ryan Williams next. He reclassified today, so we'll see if that happens. I don't think it's happening. There's been some rumbles and some rumors that potentially he could flip, but I don't think it's going to happen the way that I've been reading things and seeing things on social media. He's probably still staying with Alabama. But Julian Fleming, there he is right there. Julian Fleming was the number 1 overall recruit at a high school, or number 1 wide receiver recruit at a high school. I believe it was 2020, 2021, something like that. And he really just hasn't panned out of what people expected him to be at Ohio State. Had some injuries here and there, but there it is. Penn State, Kentucky are battling it out according to On3. I think that's wild, dude. These are some of the players you never expect to see in the portal because they go to such big, prestigious programs and they're the number 1 or the number 2 rated recruit at their position. They go in, you expect them to play early and play often, and then they do, and then they just don't put up the numbers that you're expecting. It's just seeing those guys jump in the portal always gets me. I know I should expect it because it's happened every year since we've had the portal, but seeing a guy like Julian Fleming enter the portal it definitely gets, it catches your eye because you remember the name coming out and all the talk about him around him a couple of years ago. And then now he's not the number 1 recruit or number 1 receiver in the portal, but he is up there and he's a top talent for a wide receiver in the portal. So I wide receiver is a much, much needed position at every school you go to. I just talked about a few minutes ago, what college game's coming to, but the Robert Lewis pickup for Auburn is definitely helps. It helps give us a little more depth and helps get some mentorship for the younger guys that are coming in for a guy that's played a bunch of football. And I'm excited to see what he's going to be able to do at Auburn and how they're going to use him in this offense.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Julian Fleming too. There's been some rumors floating around that him and Kyle McCord may be kind of a package deal type of
Nebraska
situation.
maybe.
Yeah, Nebraska has actually hosted them both for a visit, so I would keep an eye on that. Kyle McCord actually got a crystal ball to Nebraska right before we started this podcast, so it looks like they could be trending for him. Matt Rule may find his quarterback, and also from the high school recruiting perspective, Dylan Raiola, which was one of the top quarterbacks in this recruiting class 2024 has been committed to Georgia for a while now. He actually just got crystal ball to flip to Nebraska tonight.
I saw that.
So that's something to keep an eye on as well, because he's been a really solid Georgia commit, I believe, for close to a year now. I think. I mean, it's been he's been committed a while now, so that's something to keep an eye on. Another guy sticking with receivers though a little bit is Will Sheppard, the transfer from Vandy. Vandy's had a lot of guys hit the portal. I think by far the most in the SEC so far. Will Sheppard's a really, really good player too, really good receiver. Seeing some predictions here, maybe Tulane, maybe Mississippi State. I'd love to see him at Mississippi State. I think that'd be really cool. I think he's an SEC caliber player. Obviously, he's put up, good numbers at Vandy. Had a solid career there so far, and been one of their better players. So I'd love to see that if he did end up staying in the SEC. Maybe, getting in Jeff Levy's offense, that'd be a lot of fun. But he's a guy I'm high on. He's a very good talent. So I'm curious to see kind of where he ends up as well.
Absolutely. Another receiver that Auburn has been reported to going after is Deion Burks. He's a sophomore from Purdue. Had a pretty good year this year. 47 catches, 630 yards, and 7 touchdowns. I'm not sure the reasons he's leaving Purdue. Maybe because he feels like he would be better suited for himself and put himself in a better position somewhere else. But Auburn is potentially landing him. There's been talks on social medias, and On3 has him like a 50-something% chance, crystal ball, to land. There he is right there, 53.3% chance to land at Auburn. Apparently it's the recruiting battle between Auburn and Texas. So I again, bring all the help that you can get on the outside for Auburn and go get a sure enough quarterback, because in my mind, and again, I'm being Mr. Realist this year, and I'll be a Mr. Realist until Auburn proves me otherwise. The expectations for the next season for Auburn for 2024 season, with all the fans and how Auburn played towards the end of the year, they were played close with Georgia, played close with Alabama. There's just a few missing factors. Now they're going to go out and they're having a really good cycle in high school recruiting this year. They're having a really decent cycle so far in the portal with some of the names they've picked up and some of the names they're rumored to be getting or in battles with. I think the expectations are going to be a little bit overstated for some of the fans. I think that Auburn fans are going to potentially set themselves up for a little bit of disappointment. But Hugh Freeze is going to have to do whatever he can to get a big name guy to come in and play quarterback and fill up some of the other holes that there is on the offense, because of the expectations that are going to be around Auburn this next year with how they played Alabama and how they played Georgia. And there were some games they were in without the talent there, and now they're getting the talent. And even though they're young guys or they're new to the team, people are going to be expecting them to go compete and win 9-10 games next year. And I think it's possible. Obviously, it's always possible, but realistic? Is it realistic? I don't know about that. And so that's my only. And that's for every team, man. I mean, there can be a team out there that's going and getting. I mean, you scrolled up this page a bunch of times. You scrolled on a bunch of different positions, and there's Notre Dame signs everywhere on here. If Notre Dame lands half these guys are after, especially Riley Leonard, they're going to be expected to go compete for the national championship. I mean, I fell victim to them this year when they had Sam Hartman. I was like, well, they're going to compete for the national championship, and I truly thought that. And I even said on this podcast about week 5 or 6, they were the best team in college football. And I ate my words because they ended up losing the next week. But the expectations from getting a few players is always going to be boosted. And I just hope fans are understanding of see where you are this year, have a realistic vision of where you can be next year. And then year 3 and 4 is when the expectations should get a little bit bigger. But right now, some of these teams, like, I don't know, especially in the Auburn fandom, I think some people are going to be a little too high on what their expectations should be next year. And then they're going to not call for Hugh Freeze's head, but I think they're going to be a little kind of restless next year, even though they shouldn't be. And I could be wrong. I could be completely off base, but I think I got my finger on the pulse on that one.
No, I agree with you too. Because I think what people need to understand too is the roster, the shape that it's in, and the talent that they have coming in this recruiting class. They're probably going to be relying on a lot of younger players because a
Yeah.
lot of these guys are going to come in and probably be immediately, able to play or probably some of the best players at their positions as soon as they get on campus. And when you're relying on a lot of young players, I mean, there's going to be growing pains. There just is, and so I think
Mistakes made.
like you said, I think people just need to have realistic expectations. Know that hey, this is another building year of bringing in talent. You're bringing in pieces that are going to help you in years 3, 4, 5. But just realize that it's going to take some time, and this is just one building block. You, it takes more than just that. You've got to stack those on top of each other to really get to where you want to go. It,
Right.
it takes a lot more than just one. Um, so,
And
but
speaking
that's
on
a
that,
good first step.
it's kind of the same with Florida. You were talking about Florida earlier. Go ahead and I want to hear your thoughts on that with all this mass exodus they're having with some of their better players. And like you said, you think that fans are going to start getting restless and run Napier out of town before giving him any real time.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I mean, I think as a podcast as a whole, we've been pretty positive with Florida. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I really have since Billy Napier got there. I like his philosophy. I like his track record as a head coach, what he's done so far. Obviously, at Florida, it hasn't been a smooth ride so far. I mean, it's been bumpy. There's been a lot of growing pains. The roster was just not in very good shape when he got there, and the bad part is at the end of year 2, it was still a very undisciplined football team, and I don't think that's a typical Billy Napier team. Like I
No.
think Billy Napier is one of the more organized coaches out there. I really think he will do a good job. I'm just concerned a little bit that I honestly a little prediction already. I don't think Florida's going to have a great year next year. I don't think they're there yet. Like I think they're kind of like Auburn. They're building blocks. Like they've got a really good recruiting class come in. It's kind of hit rocky times a little bit lately. They've lost a couple pretty highly rated commits. They're still at number 5 in the On3 rankings right now. So it's still a really, really good class, but they've lost a little bit of momentum on that, it seems. And then obviously with Trevor Etienne in the portal now, their best pass rusher is in the portal now. So that they're losing some pretty key pieces of guys they were hoping to be able to keep and kind of build around next year. So I really and when you combine that with kind of like Auburn, they're going to be relying on some younger guys more than likely. Um, just when you look at Florida's schedule next year, we know the SEC is only getting stronger with Texas and OU coming in. Their schedule is just really, really tough next year. I just don't see Florida having a big year in the win loss column. I think it's going to be probably very similar to this year, to be honest with you. I think they're probably going to be back in the 5, 6 win range, honestly. And in year 3, that's not going to sit very well in Gainesville at all. And I'm just worried that he's probably, I'm more leaning towards now he's probably not going to get the time that he really needs to turn it around because I think in this day and age, too, people want to see results pretty quickly. And by year 3, if you don't really look like you're moving in the right direction that much, you're probably going to be on the chopping block more likely than not nowadays. So I'm
Is
just
that
not
is
so
that
sure.
fair though? Is that fair to Napier?
I think it
Do you
depends
think
on
3 years is enough time to at least get going in the right direction, especially at a place like Florida? I can see I'm like 50-50 on this. I can see, yeah, at a place like that, it's an easier place to recruit to than most places in the country. And you're losing guys that are your staple guys that you're trying to build around and create the culture around. And then, you're not really doing a great job on the field product. It looks about the same year after year. Do you think that if he rolls out another year like this, that it would be a fair to run him out the door, or do you think that another year would be then it would be fair after year 4?
yeah, I mean, honestly, I just think it's going to take more time, honestly, and I'm kind of wondering now, especially obviously we're a long way, a long ways from next year. Like we only know what their team's going to look like exactly next
Right.
year. but you can kind of see down the road a little bit the way things are trending. Obviously, they still got a great class coming in, and we've been saying like his future's more tied to next season and this recruiting class and what he can get out of them more so than what's happened in his first 2 years. But I'm not. My expectations aren't very high for him next year because I think they've still got a lot of holes to fill. They're going to be relying on a lot of young players, and that schedule is not doing them any favors. So I don't know. I mean, I do think, regardless of win or loss record, they need to look more disciplined next year. Like if the same kind of problems are still showing themselves and they look really, really undisciplined and not very well coached, if that kind of stays the same and looks like it has the first 2 years, he probably won't make it to year four, honestly. But I still do believe in him. I think he can get the job done there. But I'm starting to wonder, you know, will it happen or not? I don't know. But I'm going to be keeping a close eye on him as we go into next year because I think it's going to be, whether it's fair or not, I think it's going to be a hot seat type of situation for him.
Absolutely. And there's a guy I want to talk about that left an SEC team that left Georgia, Nyland Green. He's the number one cornerback in the portal class. 5-star recruit out of the 2021 class. Couldn't ever get into the starting rotation at Georgia. Where do you think he lands, and do you think he stays in the conference?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, super highly rated guy out of his recruiting class. Think he's gonna land in a really good situation. I don't personally have any intel of where he's leaning yet. I think believe he just entered the portal the other day, so it's pretty fresh right now. Yeah, I think it's very possible, though. I think he's going to end at whether he stays in the SEC or not, I'm not sure, but I think he's going to land at another high major Power 5 type of school. Wouldn't be shocked at all if he doesn't remain in the conference because, I believe in his talent. Just like I said with Ja'Cory Brooks, even though he hasn't really got to showcase it yet, but I think he's going to land in a really good spot.
What about Trey Moore? He won the Conference Player of the Year for the CUSA from UTSA. He had 35 and a half tackles with 22 sacks and 104 total tackles. Second best pass rusher available.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what I like about the portal is guys that get overlooked in high school. They go to smaller schools and they have standout year, a year or two. And then they get into the portal and go to the higher ranks, the Big Tens, the Big 12s, the SECs, ACCs even. And they dominate there and end up working their way into the league or potentially playing in the postseason in the CFP and stuff. But this is what I really like about it. But there's a crystal ball for him going to Texas. And Alabama and LSU are also in the mix for him as well.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I can't say I've really watched him, honestly. So I'm just going off of other people's, opinions and other people's intel of him and what they've been hearing. Like you, it does seem like Texas is the front runner here, right down the road too. And I think that's the biggest reason for Texas' success too. Is you look at their line of scrimmage, especially their defensive front, how good they are on that side of the ball. I think that's the biggest reason for their success, and that's been an issue for them. I think when they've been down, they haven't been as good on the line of scrimmage. I mean, that's where things really start. You build your team, inside out, and I think that's the biggest reason that Texas was able to make it to the college football playoff this year and be able to live up to those expectations that people had in the preseason because their defensive front was able to dominate a lot of games. And I think Trey Moore will be a great addition to that going forward. Obviously, it's taking a little getting used to. They're coming to the SEC, so Trey Moore very possibly is going to be an SEC player next year. So yeah, I think that'd be a great addition. Heard a lot of really good things about Trey Moore, and like I said, I think that's a big reason for Texas' success is what they built on that defensive line.
Absolutely. Kind of got a question that doesn't really involve portal talk, but what are your thoughts on Venables coming into the SEC next year? We know Sarkisian has been coaching the SEC. He's been part of the SEC before. Excuse me, being a great coordinator, arguably the best offensive coordinator Nick Saban's ever had in the SEC. And now you got just said his name, Lord.
Venables.
Venables coming in. One of the best defense coordinators in college football history while he was at Clemson, put up some damn good defenses while he was out there, but he's never really done it in the SEC. What are your expectations for him in Oklahoma? Because Oklahoma's got a fantastic roster. They've always had a great roster. They're going to stack up with some of the best. But coaching and understanding the importance and the in and outs of the SEC goes a long way. Do you think they hit a roadblock, or do you think not soars with flying colors, but do you think that he's going to be able to handle it and that Oklahoma is going to be just quite all right? Or because I think we can all see Texas is in the Final Four. They beat Alabama this year. It was a really good game. Even with some injuries here and there and not playing well, they still find ways to win the game. I think they're going to be okay in the SEC. They're one of the top programs in history. But what are your opinions on Venables and Oklahoma coming into the SEC? Do you think they'll be able to hack it, or do you think they'll be middle to bottom tier?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I definitely have a better opinion now than I did coming into the year. Obviously, they had a really rough 2022 from what people expected, and especially what you would expect out of Oklahoma. And it looked pretty rocky for him there in year one, and obviously he was able to bounce back and have a really solid year two. I mean, probably a little disappointing. They lost a couple games where I think they were better than more talented than the other team. So I believe they go 9-3 in the Big 12 this year, I believe, and honestly, I think they lost to Oklahoma State, I believe, which I find that hard to believe, honestly. Like, I think we should have had Oklahoma. Obviously, I know it didn't work out because Oklahoma lost, but I would have much rather seen an Oklahoma-Texas rematch than what we got in the Big 12 title game. But to kind of answer your question, though, I don't think they're set up quite as good as Texas is, obviously. Right. I mean, that's kind of easy to say with, Texas being in the playoffs and Big 12 champs. You're very possibly going to have the SEC having the top three teams in the preseason next year with Alabama, Georgia, and Texas. I mean, it's very possible at least three in the top five at worst. So I do think Oklahoma, I would anticipate next year, I think they're going to be middle of the pack, maybe slightly above middle of the pack, in my opinion. Like, I think I would say a little bit above average, I would think. In year one, I think that's roughly where they're going to run most of the time, in my opinion. I do think there's some times where they'll be able to get up to the top of the SEC. I mean, obviously they've shown the ability, to be in the upper echelon. I mean, they are in the upper echelon of college football historically. So I do believe they'll be able to obtain that. But I wouldn't put them in the tier of like Alabama, Georgia, like Texas, some of that. But I do believe they will be definitely middle of the pack, but probably a little bit above average, I would say, maybe next year and moving forward for the foreseeable future.
Absolutely. What else you want to cover?
Well, I would like to talk a little bit about signing day next week or next Wednesday, and obviously we'll be able to cover that a little bit more in depth next week during our podcast. We'll probably do another one next Monday right before signing day. Obviously, kind of what you would expect. I'm going to pull up the recruiting rankings here just to give everybody a look so far. On 3-2, they take an average of all the larger recruiting services. So this is kind of an average of, Rivals, 247, ESPN. So this kind of gives you a composite look at the recruiting rankings. I mean, obviously, extremely SEC dominant, exactly what you would expect. Are there any teams in the top 10 in your mind that surprise you, or is it about what you expect a week out from signing day?
It's about what I expect. Florida State being as high as they are, a little surprising, just because of the recent years of recruiting that they've had. Miami being that high, obviously it's a easier place to recruit to. I mean, South Beach, who doesn't want to go play there? But just again, their track record. But just outside of the top 10, Auburn is ranked at number 11 and LSU is ranked at number 12. I would have expected LSU to be ranked inside the top 10, and I honestly would have expected Auburn to be ranked a little lower. Obviously, the Cam Coleman commitment definitely boosted Auburn's ranking for sure, but it just shows you that, what Hugh Freeze is doing, but it also shows you how deep the conference is, and there's a battle and a competition and everything, not just on the field. Because you look at 11 is Auburn, 12 LSU, 13 Tennessee, 15 Texas A&M, 19 South Carolina, 20 Ole Miss, 23 Kentucky, 25 Arkansas, and then you got Oklahoma, Texas, Florida, Alabama, and Georgia in the top 10. So I mean, that's what did I just name? 9 or 10 teams in the top 25, maybe 11 teams in the top 25. I mean, that even if you're not in the top 5, which is what is expected to win national championships, if you're in the top 25 recruiting everybody in the same conference, it just shows you, man, this is 100% hands down the best conference that there is. But yeah, Florida State, it shocks me a little bit. Obviously not with the kind of season they had this year, but it shocks me just a little bit. But you got to give tip your cap to him. He's turning that program around down there big time, and had an undefeated season this year, top 5 in the recruiting class. From what they were ever since 2015 to now, Norvell has done a fantastic job turning that program around.
Yeah, 100%. I'm really impressed too with Oregon being there at 6.
Yeah.
I'm really impressed with what Dan Lanning's done there with high school recruiting and the portal. I think he's obviously been very active in the portal already, landing Dylan Gabriel. So I think that's going to continue. But yeah, you count off and you add Texas and OU in there. SEC has 13 of the top 25 in recruiting.
That's crazy.
So
dude.
over half the top 25 is SEC schools, which is just insane. And honestly, what you come to expect, I mean, that's kind of been the norm over the last, 15 or 20 years or so, really, since track and recruiting's become a thing.
And Michigan being down in 16, that shocks me a little bit. They're usually a top 10 class. Harbaugh does a good job of recruiting, but they're outside the top 15, which is rare.
Yeah, for sure. I think too. I mentioned Florida earlier. They were number 3 at a time. They did lose a couple guys, so they, dropped slightly, which is not a huge deal. But they've got a couple other guys that I've heard are kind of on flip watch potentially. So kind of keep an eye on that. I think it is very critical for Billy Napier to keep this class as intact as he can. I mean, you definitely don't want to, they got really hot during the summer too, jumped all the way up, and then you'd hate to lose that momentum here right at signing day, the last month or so. So it's very important for him to keep that recruiting class as intact as possible. And it's going to be a good class regardless. But, for him going into year 3, it's important to keep as many of those guys on board as you can and kind of keep the recruiting momentum going in the right direction.
Yeah, and there's talks of KJ Bolden potentially flipping to Auburn. If that happens, I think Auburn jumps in the top 10. I think they probably jump over Notre Dame because that will be their third 5-star. It'd be 21 total overall commits. And I believe KJ Bolden's committed to Florida State. So if he does end up flipping, Florida State's probably going to drop a little bit. Probably not out of the top 10, but drop a little bit. So like you said, before signing day, these numbers could be, the rankings could be, you just hit shuffle and they all go a different way. So it just depends on how these in-home visits are going, because all these big time recruits that are uncommitted or even committed but haven't signed the dotted line, they're having in-home recruits or in-home visits this week. I mean, KJ Bolden had an in-home visit with Hugh Freeze. He had an in-home visit with Kirby Smart. And I'm sure the list goes on and on. Those are just the 2 I've seen reported. And so, the top guys are having in-home recruit or in-home visits with these coaches, and they're doing everything they can to get those guys there. So these numbers are going to be shaken up by next Wednesday for sure. They probably aren't going to be in the exact same order they are now. If they are, I'll be shocked. But these are about where I thought they would be, minus a few teams here and there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the top 10 is kind of a lot of what you'd expect, and obviously SEC dominance throughout the top 25 is expected as well. So, like I said, this is going to change probably a good bit between now and next week, and obviously the late signing period in February. So that's something we'll probably get to dive in a little bit deeper, next week. And then obviously we'll be previewing playoff games coming up
Mhm.
soon, and some bowl matchups we're looking forward to as well. And we'll be able to find out a little bit more as far as opt outs and things of that nature as we get a little bit closer to those matchups happening. Um, but we really appreciate everybody tuning in um, to our portal episode. We'll continue to monitor this um, going forward. Really, every episode it'll be something we're touching on and kind of updating it as guys are making their decisions. But we appreciate you tuning in. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see y'all back next week.
Thank you, guys.